In 1952, something truly remarkable happened. Albert Einstein, the genius behind the theory of relativity and one of the most famous scientists in the world, was offered the presidency of Israel. Can you imagine that? The man whose name has become synonymous with genius being asked to lead a nation. But here's the twist: he turned it down, and his reasons for doing so tell us a lot about who he was and what he stood for. Let's set the stage a bit. Israel, in the early 1950s, was a brand new country, having declared its independence just a few years earlier, in 1948. It was a time of immense challenges, building a nation from the ground up, integrating immigrants from all over the world, and defending against hostile neighbors. The role of the president, while mostly ceremonial, was incredibly important as a symbol of unity and leadership. When the first president, Chaim Weizmann, passed away, the search was on for a successor who could inspire the nation and represent it on the world stage. Now, Einstein wasn't just any scientist. He was a towering figure, not only in the world of science, but also as a cultural icon. Born in Germany to a Jewish family, Einstein had a deep connection to his heritage. Throughout his life, he supported the Zionist movement, which advocated for the establishment of a Jewish state. He was a strong believer in the importance of education and was actively involved in the founding of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He saw the university as a beacon of learning and progress, not just for Jews, but for all of humanity. After World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust, Einstein's commitment to the Jewish people only grew stronger. He supported the creation of Israel, seeing it as a safe haven and a symbol of hope. But Einstein was also a man of peace. He dreamed of a world where science and reason could overcome hatred and violence. He advocated for disarmament and international cooperation, believing that these were the keys to a better future. So, when Israel's Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, reached out to Einstein with the offer to become the country's next president, it was more than just a political move. It was a gesture of deep respect. They weren't just asking a scientist to lead. They were asking a man who embodied the very ideals they wanted their new nation to represent. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite the honor and the opportunity to serve his people in such a significant way, Einstein declined. In his response, he expressed how deeply moved he was by the offer. He knew how important the role was and how much it meant for the people of Israel to ask him. But he also knew himself well enough to realize that he wasn't the right person for the job.
Einstein was 73 years old at the time, and his health was starting to decline. But more importantly, he didn't see himself as a politician or a statesman. He was a thinker, a scientist, and a humanitarian. He had spent his life pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, not governing people. He believed that his talents were best used in the world of ideas, where he could continue to contribute to the advancement of science and the promotion of peace. By saying no to the presidency, Einstein wasn't just turning down a job. He was reaffirming his belief and staying true to who he was. He recognized that the presidency required skills and experiences he simply didn't have. And he didn't want to risk disappointing the people who had placed their trust in him. Imagine for a moment what it would have been like if Einstein had said yes. The course of his later years would have been completely different, and perhaps even the role of the presidency in Israel might have changed. But by saying no, Einstein remained focused on what he believed was his true calling, using his intellect and influence to make the world a better place. Not through politics, but through science and advocacy. In Israel, life moved on, and Yitzhak Ben Zvi, a historian and one of the state's founders, was eventually elected as the second president. He served with distinction, but the story of Einstein's offer remains a fascinating what-if in history. This moment in time shows us something profound about Einstein. Despite his fame and brilliance, he was incredibly self-aware. He knew where his strengths lay and where they didn't. He understood the importance of leadership, but also knew that it wasn't the right path for him. Instead, he chose to continue his work in the areas where he could make the most difference. So, when we think about Einstein, it's not just about the equations and the theories. It's about a man who knew himself deeply, who was committed to peace and progress, and who understood that sometimes saying no is just as important as saying yes. His decision to decline the presidency of Israel wasn't a rejection of the people or the cause he believed in. It was an affirmation of his commitment to the values he held most dear. And that, perhaps, is one of the greatest lessons we can learn from him.